Yes. Yes. How you doing, Jeff?
All right, how are you?
Pretty good.
Did you enjoy your days in the sun?
It was
Grand
interesting.
Marshal?
It was interesting. Enjoyed it for about 15 minutes. It's, well, I didn't have to walk like you guys do. I'm telling you, we were watching at the end. People were, it's a hike.
Sure.
And it was hot.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it was.
But I'll tell you, doing this it's like, all right.
Right.
Yeah, it's bad.
But it was
Try
interesting.
doing it when you're driving.
Well, yeah. Well,
I'm scared to death I was going to run
I
some
didn't
kid
have
over.
to walk. I didn't have to walk it, but yeah.
I think Chris thought he had to keep up with the Olympia band trailer. So I had to jog a couple of times to catch up to the kids.
Hey!
I kept watching people.
I passed a whole lot of people without any candy.
I gotta go.
Change paper copies if we need it that way.
On what? What are we changing?
This was the Metronet.
Yeah, but I didn't. I thought we were just gonna go ahead and. I didn't know anything was changing.
Descriptions of the ordinance.
Nobody told me. Did you tell me that? When? We talked about whether to even take the MetroNet thing or not. Whether we even needed to. We didn't talk about changing the legal description. But we need to, yeah. The legal description's changed.
Yeah, we don't have any legal descriptions, so this is just a general grant.
Okay, so what are you asking?
In the Clifton Larson letter, in the last paragraph of the statement about inconsistencies or anything, we did not identify any material inconsistencies
Okay,
between
let's
the.
pull it, because we're not on the same
the whole
page.
statement.
All
I just let Andrew know.
I knew is we weren't sure we
guys
even
know.
needed.
He's gonna bring
If they
it
were
up.
gonna go outside of the fence, we may not need it. We didn't clarify that. I didn't know anything about the ordinance. Why don't we just withdraw it? Okay, and then we can deal, there's no rush. So we're gonna withdraw, Mayor, on the item F, MetroNet easement, just withdraw that. We'll bring that back, maybe. We're not sure we even need to, but,
Okay. Got it.
yeah.
Last letter, their opinion on material discrepancies. They dropped the sentence.
Yeah, we took
caught
that out. No, we removed the sentence because I didn't like
Just
what they said.
didn't
Yeah.
want
Yeah, no, I didn't
We
catch it.
redacted it.
I
You
just,
redacted. Did you see Andrew? What-
I told Andrew, he didn't see it. He said he's gonna bring it up with them after the report's
We did
over.
not
So
have
that-
any material inconsistencies between, I
So
don't
it's
know.
gonna,
No, I didn't see
it
that.
refers up to here. It's pretty
Yeah.
clear what they're gonna say, but
You can ask her. She's gonna make a presentation, I hope.
he's gonna say something when
Okay.
she's done so he doesn't throw her off.
Okay, thank you. Good catch.
Got everybody but Scott. He's coming.
Oh, by the way, I noticed this tonight.
Scott is, have you heard from Scott? Okay, I haven't either. As far as I know, he's coming.
Just run late then.
Yep.
Well, he would have to unbelievably blurry starts. But the first one, they're going to have a tight rein on it. Although he says he would go deeper than he knows they'll allow him. Take a week to get him up. Yeah, that's a tough one. We're getting it down to the end before he's.
That's gonna run for mayor. Really? I thought he was a special needs.
No, there's two.
Oh, yeah, that's, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Pardon? He's a guy. What?
Are you right in the front parade?
I was, yeah, not right in the front. There was
There comes Scott.
I was like 6th or 7th back. There were flags, a bunch of flag groups, but pretty much, pretty close.
Call to order a regular meeting for the Normal Town Council for September 6, 2016. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus?
Here.
Mr. Fritzen?
Here.
Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. McBride? Mrs. Lorenz? Here. Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Gaines?
Here. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item of business, as always, is the omnibus agenda. These are items that will be taken with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. I would point out that item F, an ordinance approving grants of utility easements to Metro FiberNet LLC, is being withdrawn for further refinement and will come back to us at a later date. I would like to be excused from voting on any bills I may have incurred in my duties as mayor. Fritzen?
Yeah, it has to be excused from voting on the Bloomington offset bills, and I'd like items G and H.
Mine. You got mine.
Motion for approval?
Move approval?
Second.
Second.
Items considered under the omnibus agenda tonight are approval of the minutes of the public hearing of August 15th, 2016, and approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 15th, 2016. Approval of town of normal expenditures for payment as of August 26th, 2016. A resolution to authorize the purchase of a service truck with the utility body to Lehman Chevy City at a net cost of $35,769.27, including a trade-in. A resolution approving a salary schedule adjustment for classified employees to reflect a cost of living adjustment. A conditional resolution partially approving the 5th addition to the Hever Ridge subdivision. And that are the items that have not been pulled. Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz? Aye. Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. Those items are approved. Item G is an ordinance amending Section 4.10 of the Town of Normal Municipal Code having to do with taproom liquor licenses. Mr. Fritzen?
Move approval.
Second.
Mr. Fritzen?
Yeah, I guess I'd like some background or explanation on how we had arrived at some of the details here. For instance, the amount of servings and the fee itself. Those are a couple of things I'm curious about, how we arrived at those.
I believe that the legal department, and Brian can correct me if I'm wrong, took a look at similar ordinances from other communities in Illinois and drew most of these provisions from some of those other communities that had tap room licenses of this nature. Anything to add, Mr. Day?
Yes, that is correct. Particularly, most of the taproom licenses in the state are sort of centered around the Chicagoland area. This primarily came from Naperville, as they have the most comprehensive taproom ordinance that I'd found.
And the fee?
The fee is pretty much just an aggregate of our general fees throughout the liquor code. For the on-premises, off-premises, just, it's pretty much right in the middle of all of our other fees for the various liquor licenses that we've got.
I guess the thing that surprised me a bit, and I guess, that's one reason I want to know how we arrived at it, and I'm familiar with some of Naperville's I've looked at their ordinances several times over the last few years, and they are very comprehensive in a lot of ways, not just this. But I guess my anticipation was kind of a tasting type operation, and serving a 16-ounce beer is plenty of taste. You know, I mean, it's so, and you can get up to 3 of those. And I guess it's going to be just there's no way for us to, other than through audits, which I assume they would be included in any audits we do, but to determine whether or not they limit to that. But I'm a little concerned in that, you know, historically, Normal obviously has been very conservative in its liquor licensing. When we opened things up with the Class O, you know, we had some unintended consequences from that. And yet the Class O still technically included food service of some nature. And here we're foregoing that. So it can be called a tap room license, but it starts to me, start to tilt towards tavern or bar, which we don't have that license classification. So to me, I understand you know, I'm happy for Distill. I'm happy they're, you know, having some success, and that they're going to create the facility they're going to create when it comes to their brewing and the employment and the commerce that'll be generated there. But I guess, to me, associated with a brewery, a tasting room is an appropriate complement, but you know, 3 16-ounce glasses or 4 12-ounce beers is beyond a tasting operation in my book. So I like to know if any of my colleagues have any comments as well on that, and then I'll determine how I'll vote.
Ms. Gaines, then Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking, that they can't have more than 3, but that's still a lot. You know, I agree with Mr. Fritzen in that I'm thinking tasting, that's not a tasting, that's kind of a drinking session. If you drink more than 3 beers, then you're hazardous. So why, did you say that's out of Naperville, and that's how many they do, or why is it so much or so high?
You can set whatever limit you want. If you want to have 1, or you want to eliminate 16 ounce, this, you know, it appears to be a fairly standard provision, but obviously you can establish whatever limit you feel comfortable with.
I guess I'm just more, you know, I've been to more like wine tastings and, you know, in shops, and usually there you're getting a small amount and you have a limit of 5, but then it's, you know, just a minute amount. So that's like, this seems like a lot more to me.
Yeah.
But I'm not, you know, I'm not an expert.
Oftentimes, I understand these tasting facilities, they have 4-ounce glasses, and they give you a grouping of 4-ounce. That's pretty common, but we are also finding that a lot of these ordinances allow for a larger glass, but a limit on the number of glasses. But again, it's entirely up to you how you want to structure this. We just kind of borrowed from what other communities have done.
Mr. McCarthy.
I guess I don't have an objection. Well, no, I don't have an objection to the 316 ounces. I guess without getting a debate about what is too much and not enough, beer is going to depend on who's drinking the beer. I know several people who say 316 ounces is not enough, but hopefully they aren't getting behind the wheel of a car when they do that. But I do know with the variety and the myriad of beers that Distill and White Oak, we have a representative of White Oak Brewing here as well, who's interested in doing the same sort of thing. that they produce a myriad of beers, so the opportunity to have one of a few different kind actually limits you to 3 types of beers, and they may produce 10, 12, 15 different types of beers, and so it is in fact a limitation on their ability to drink. I actually had some positives. I think this is a great thing. We've got a burgeoning craft brewing industry in the United States, and some of our Illinois legislation at the state level is handcuffing a lot of them, that it is allowing them not really to thrive here in central Illinois. And this is a step in trying to help. It's going to be a little tiny bit of help. Nobody's going to get rich on tap rooms here, I don't think. But it is a step in the right direction to kind of remove some of the handcuffs that the state of Illinois has placed on Illinois brewing. I am happy to see that we did include a no gaming license specifically with this alcohol license. We did have some Class O unintended consequences. And to me, that helps maintain the integrity of what this is supposed to be about, which is to give craft brewers the opportunity to market officially licensed commercial craft brewers in the state of Illinois. Let's make sure that that's clear, that every garage home brewer isn't going to be able to get this license here. They have to be duly licensed by the state of Illinois. So I was very happy to see that we included that we're not going to end up with any video gaming in our tap rooms as a result. And I was also happy to see that we restricted the hours. Again, these things aren't really intended to be all-night college bar type situations, so I was really happy to see those 2 limiting provisions included in that. Thank you.
I'll say for my limited experience at a Illinois AIA meeting a couple of years ago, garnering yet another Uptown Award, we were honored at, was held in a tap room in a brewery in Chicago. And that was a multi-hour event. And I'm not sure if there was a limit on the amount of drinks, but frankly, I doubt if anybody had more than 2 or 3 beers at the event, and there was a lot of food. So I think, you know, the slightly higher glass amount allows the tap room to garner further revenue by hosting events like this for organizations, and I feel that's appropriate.
I'm going to think about that.
Further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
All right.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
No.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The ordinance is approved. Item H is an ordinance amending Division 14 of Chapter 22 of the Town of Normal Municipal Code having to do with video gaming license moratorium. Mr. Fritzen?
Approval?
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Fritzen?
No questions or anything on this one, just wanted to pull it to draw attention to it. As Mr. McCarthy expanded on my thought that one of the unintended consequences of creating a Class O to, in part, help the idea of the craft beer market and create a venue for that. Instead, we've had an influx of video gaming, and I think the alarming thing to me in the report is that from January 2016 through July of 2016, $5,991,000 was placed in the video gaming machines. That's money that is not spent elsewhere in entertainment that actually does create jobs and more hard goods than gambling does. So, you know, that's a lot of money, a lot of money that is being diverted from other uses for this form of entertainment. And I think I am glad that we're taking this step here, giving us some time to review this in more detail in the coming months and maybe come up with a better solution long term. Thank you for thanks to everybody who was involved in responding this way.
Further discussion on this item? Mr. McBride?
Just to buttress my colleagues' comments, I'm also pleased to see this happen. I mean, I think the consequences were unintended, and I think it's good just to hit the pause button, have some further discussions about it, maybe some public input, and then figure out where we go from here.
Yeah, and I would point out that the Class O license category is not the culprit so much on this. There are plenty of established businesses that have other forms of licenses that are getting video gaming. I think it's going to be our charge as a council to determine, what's the right path on this. I know there's levels of concern from everybody on this council, but what the right path is for the community. So taking a time out on this is a pretty prudent thing to do, I think. Ms. Gaines?
What does the license cost to have the video gambling in the town of Normal? We have a license fee
$200 a machine, up to 5 machines.
a year.
Wendy, could you turn your mic on?
I'm on.
What'd you say it was?
$200 a machine for up to 5 machines
Right.
per year.
Per year.
Which is a relatively low license fee.
Yes, it is.
I know some communities very close by have considered increasing that and haven't, but it is not unusual to see communities go up to $1,000. Now, I don't think the concerns that have been expressed here have anything to do with revenue.
No.
But it is, our license fees are relatively low.
Further? Please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz? Aye. Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritson?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The ordinance is approved. Our first item of general orders tonight is a presentation by Hope Wheeler, a partner at Clifton Larson Allen CPA firm, and that's on the town's annual financial statements and audit report. And Mr. Andrew Hun, our
I'm going to join her to help run the machine a little bit. And
Thank you for having me here tonight. I'll go ahead and get started while Andrew's pulling up the presentation. As you're aware, each year we issue several different reports as part of the audit process. I want to go over at a high level these reports. The first one I'd like to go over is called the governance letter, or communication with you as the governing board. Just to hit some highlights of that letter, the first bullet point there, significant accounting policies. There were 2 new governmental accounting standards implemented this fiscal year that were of great significance. One of the bigger standards implemented over the past few years, that's GASB 68 and 71. You probably recall talking about that last year, that was coming. These standards impacted the financial reporting by requiring a net pension liability to be recorded in the government-wide financial statements. This related to IMRF plan, fire and police pension plans. This did, the beginning net position, or like last year's ending net position, was adjusted in this year's statements to show the impact of that at the beginning of the year. And that did have a negative impact on the government-wide full accrual basis financial statements at the end of the year because of the liabilities accrued with those new standards. In the past, those had really just been a disclosure item. Now they're a full accrual item. And we can talk about that a little bit later also. A second bullet point here is significant accounting estimates. As part of the accrual basis of accounting, there are certain items that have to be estimated, and so we just like to point those out to the governing board. The significant estimates this year include that net pension liability calculation and other calculations that have been there in the past, post-employment benefit estimates, liability for incurred but not reported claims, compensated absence, and depreciation expense. Those are all estimates that we obtain different information, historical information, to review the way they were calculated and get comfortable that it's a reasonable estimate. The next section is corrected and uncorrected misstatements. This is referring to what adjustments we had as part of the audit process. The first bullet there explains that we did have one material audit adjustment, and we noted an error in the calculation of accrued wages that affected personnel expense and accrued wages right at the end of the fiscal year. That adjustment was posted and is corrected in the financial statements that you have. The second bullet point refers to uncorrected misstatements. If we find some other things in the audit process, we accumulate those. If they're smaller dollar items, accumulate those and see if they grow to a large enough dollar amount that they really need to be posted. But there were several here. I've listed them in the presentation. a receivable balance that was an estimate, the replacement taxes due back to the state. Those were accumulated, they're attached to that letter, and those were not posted to the financial statements because they remained an insignificant dollar amount in the end. Then the last two bullet points, if we had disagreements with management as part of our audit process, I'd want to share those with you as the board, and we did not have any disagreements on financial reporting matters. And then difficulties encountered in performing the audit. Well, I think we'd all say GASB 68 was a challenge. Overall, we didn't have any difficulties in performing our audit process. As part of the bound financial statement, we include an opinion with our letters. So I'm pointing out here what findings we had as part of the audit process. The first finding I already mentioned was just when we have a material adjustment, we report that as a finding, and we did have that one adjustment to accrued wages at your fiscal year end. And we just recommend ensuring there's a good review process over that calculation on other year-end adjustments. The second item, we issue another letter that you would have received. It's called a management letter. This is an item that is just other recommendations that we wanted to point out. And here we noted in some sampling of credit card and expense report testing, there were some that we tested that were missing supporting receipts or an incomplete travel form. These were not significant in nature, but wanted to point out that it might be a good time to review the credit card policy, the expense report policy, and make sure that's as comprehensive as you'd like it, and then just make sure you're adhering to that policy. Now, to go through the bound financial statement, which that's, as you saw, 161-page document, so very high level here. If you have a question, let me know. But page 13 of that report is the crux of the audit. That is our audit opinion. We did issue a clean or unmodified opinion that these financial statements are properly presented in all material respects. There's also a separate opinion near the back of the report on government auditing standards, and that is also a clean opinion. In the past, last year we had a third opinion, the single audit or federal opinion. This year, your federal expenditures fell below the threshold. That threshold increased to $750,000. You are below that threshold, so there's no single audit opinion or federal awards opinion this year. Then page 27. Each year we go over governmental financial statements are complicated with, you have the government-wide statements starting on page 27, 28, a few pages there. Those are your full accrual basis statements. Those are the ones that they show your total assets of $290 million, liabilities and deferred inflows of $206 million, and net position, the difference between those categories, of $84 million at the end of the fiscal year. This is the section that was affected by that new net pension liability that had to be recorded. And that was a new $67 million liability required by the standards. There was an overall increase in net position for the fiscal year on the full accrual basis of $798,000. Then page 31 starts the fund financial statements. This is where you can see what you're typically used to seeing, where it's by fund. These are on the modified accrual basis in accordance with governmental accounting standards, and doesn't record long-term liabilities then. The major governmental funds this year shown, that we go through a calculation each year as part of the audit process. This year's the major funds were the general fund, which is always major, the Fire Station Capital Investment Fund, Uptown TIF Fund, and the 2016A Refunding Bond Fund. So you can see those in separate columns, and then the other funds are combined together. That's for your governmental funds. There's a separate section in the fund statements on your enterprise fund or your business type funds. There, your water fund, your sewer fund, and your storm management fund are your major funds shown. Here, just to hit some highlights, if you want to advance to the graph, this is all the governmental funds, so it excludes the water, sewer, and stormwater fund. This shows a comparison of your 2015 to 2016 revenues side by side. So you can see in most categories there was some increase in revenues, with the exception, even intergovernmental had a slight increase from the prior year, with the taxes and sales tax being there in the first column, intergovernmental charges for services, licenses, permits, and then other categories. So overall, for the fiscal year, around a $5 million increase in revenues on the modified accrual basis. The next slide is the expenditures by function. So once again, very summarized, high-level groupings here, but all the governmental funds shows a decrease in expenditures from $67 million in 2015 to $62 million in 2016. You can see most of the categories are fairly consistent. The big change is the community development column, and that related to some of your new development projects that had gone on and had significant expenditures in 2015. And then this last graph, just showing for your large or certain major funds, what your fund balance is and the trending of that from 2014 through 2016. So you can see there in the first column, the general fund, you did have an upward trend in 2016 where you had an increase in fund balance over 15 and 14. Then the water fund in the second grouping has increased from 2014 to 16. Sewer funds dropped down a little bit, but it's stayed fairly consistent actually over the 3 years. And then the last column is your stormwater fund balances, or your difference between your assets and liabilities. That is all I had for my presentation here. I know, very quick and high level, but does anyone have any questions?
Questions for Ms. Wheeler? Guess not. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And following that, item 7 is a resolution to accept the audited town of Normal financial statements and report on internal controls from the town auditors, Clifton Larson Allen CPA firm, for the year ending March 31st, 2016.
Move approval. Second.
Is there discussion on the item? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz? Aye. Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item.
Quick comment, if I could. I just want to acknowledge, I think with this audit, we're concluding, a 7-year engagement with Clifton Larson Anderson. It's been an excellent relationship, as is appropriate for any entity, certainly local government, to periodically switch auditors for a new set of eyes. We'll be bringing you I think within 30 days, where's Andrew? Within 30 days recommendation for new audits in that time frame. So that work is proceeding, but certainly thank you, Hope and CLA. It's been if we didn't have to switch, we wouldn't, but it's a prudent thing to do. So but we appreciate your hard work on our behalf and the excellent relationship we've had over the past 7 years. Thank you very much.
Item 8 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract for a bike share program with Zagster Incorporated and approving an associated budget adjustment.
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there discussion on the item? Mr. McCarthy.
First, I want to say I'm excited to see this on our agenda, having partaken a little bit in the bike and pedestrian master planning, and that this is on the horizon, or has been on that list for a long time. I do have a couple of questions, though, as I read through this. Maybe, and I'm not sure who to direct this to. I guess Mercy's coming up, so she's the one. Can you talk to us a little bit about, where we thinking about measures of success, renewal? How do we kind of evaluate this program? Is there at least a subjective ROI that we're thinking about, or anything like that?
I think there are a couple things that we can look at. Zagster has estimated a return via user fees of 20%. So that's a nice number to shoot for, something they've experienced across other comparable systems. We can also look at other university communities and look at their trajectory of use over the first few years. This type of system is relatively new, so we don't have a ton of data that goes back many years, but we can certainly look at other communities. they do provide an amazing amount of data for us to analyze in multiple formats. So they try to make, I don't think they just dump the data on you, but they really want the people paying for it to see how great it is. And so they give you access to numbers constantly. And so we've looked at the dashboard at a couple of other places like Carmel. And so the data should be clear to us. It should look to be working or not. We should be able to make decisions pretty clearly based on the numbers.
Wonderful. I guess to follow up on that, I did read about the custom decals and marketing of the support and sponsors. I'm assuming that we can use that ride data to potentially decide how or when we expand or to bring on other sponsoring partners.
Absolutely.
If ISU or IWU, if we're going to continue to, or even expand in those areas.
Yeah, the data will be ours to use and to share as we see fit. So, and we always like to share our data. So I imagine after a year, the first year, we'd be happy to share with any entity that's interested in expanding to another geographic location. And if they see data that makes it look like a good business case, then that we're happy to provide that data.
Thank you.
Mr. Fritzen?
The timing of this requires, that we make a budget adjustment in the general fund. Is there any reason what's the reason to go ahead and try to move ahead with this now rather than just working into the budget process and start next spring?
Mr. Fritz, I would say we certainly have that option, and we could do that, and you may choose to do that tonight. Given the magnitude of the adjustment, it's not a huge expenditure. Certainly, it's not insignificant, but we do, of course, provide a contingency budget in the general fund for just these kinds of unforeseen activities. I see this as an opportunity. I think we're excited about this. We're anxious to get it going. We think particularly there's still ample opportunity in the fall months, maybe the best time of the year for bicycling to take advantage of this. But there's, with that being said, there's no sense of urgency here. It's just we thought it was an opportunity to move forward, and we do have adequate funds available in our contingency account. So that's why we're recommending we do it now as opposed to wait and rebudget, or actually budget it next year. But that certainly would be a consideration that you may want to discuss further.
What would be the timeline if we say go for it to be up and running?
They're telling us as little as 3 weeks, which is pretty amazing that they can be that nimble. Now, we still have to finalize the exact locations. We're working with, even though Illinois State University, there are 4 locations, and they've indicated they're perfectly happy to have them. We've still got to work out exactly where those locations are with the university and with the other property owners, Wesleyan, downtown Bloomington, and Advocate Broman. So I don't think that'll take a long time, but it may take a little longer. It may take us a little longer than 3 weeks to get it implemented. But according to the Zagster folks, they feel that we can be up and operating that quickly if we're ready for them, and I'm not sure we'll be ready that quickly, but I would hope sometime during the month of October we can be operational.
Was there any discussion with other entities such as the City of Bloomington or Illinois Wesleyan about participating in a partnership on this from the start rather than implementing ourselves and with a couple of locations there, which makes sense to have locations there if we're going to do it?
Financially, you talk financial
Right.
discussions, not directly. I guess I know there was discussions at a staff level with the City of Bloomington. I know Mercy talked with her counterpart, and I want to mention Kyle Bomas here from Connect Transit. Kyle has been really involved in this from day one, representing Connect Transit, and they see this as, again, another another alternative mode of transportation that is complementary to public transportation. So I did want to acknowledge Kyle. We did not specifically solicit a contribution from the city, and staff had indicated that, it might be difficult right now, but we didn't formally ask, nor did we of Wesleyan or Illinois State, even though they'll directly benefit. Frankly, we wanted to move expeditiously. We knew we start complicating it with lots of funders, particularly institutional funders, who generally find it difficult to make decisions quickly. It would just delay the implementation. But I think there's the opportunity in the future, particularly if we see the demand for this service being such that we want to expand. I think then we will look to other partners to help fund that expansion, assuming they're willing to do so. We don't know that they will be. I think our goal here is this is a trial, if nothing else, and we're going to either demonstrate that this is very successful and popular, or it's not. And if it's not, and we're not seeing the usage that we'd hope to see, it's an agreement that we can walk away from with, I think, 90 days' notice. So it's not like we're locked in for 3 years. But I think most of us that have been involved, and particularly when we've seen what they've done in other comparable communities, believe this will be very successful.
One of the proposed locations is near this building.
Somewhere in
Any thoughts as to
Uptown.
where that just might be?
I have thoughts. I have not yet communicated that.
I mean, this is a high-use building. There's a lot of
Right.
traffic with the bus traffic, the
Right.
train traffic, and
Yep,
others, and so
right. Yeah, there's a lot of thinking around what's the perfect location, because you don't want to get in the way of all the pedestrians and activity that we have in the plaza, on the circle. You know, someone asked, could you put it right in the circle? No. No, absolutely not. But you want to think about all the people that come through this building that are travelers. You want to think about all the people that come through the Hyatt and the Marriott, who are definite audience for this sort of arrangement. Think about all the staff that works in this building. So we are, and Zagster definitely supports being more out in the open than to be, like in the bus bay where some of the other bike parking is. I mean, that's attractive because it's protected, and that's great for a bunch of reasons, but you do kind of need that curb appeal. So we had not drilled into an exact location. The nice thing is that they have a couple of standalone units that don't have to be literally drilled into anything. You could just set them down, and if you decide that doesn't work, you can pick them up, and move them. So it's a little less pressure than some of the systems you've seen in big cities. Those are hardcore. I mean, those are enormous. So
Drilled into the pavement.
I have a few more questions, sorry, but they retain approximately 7% of the usage fees.
right.
They have guaranteed money, why do they need the 7%?
It's a good question.
When it's the subsidy, including Bromen's, or Advocate's sponsorship, it's an 80% subsidy. It's a pretty high subsidy for, the bikes that are going to be used, X number of months out of the year. And that's one of my other questions, and you can just tack this one on. Where are they going to be in the winter? Where are the bikes going to be stored? Are we going to end up being responsible for some space for where the bikes are stored?
No, I can answer that question first. We get to choose what we want to do with the bikes in the winter. Some communities take them in and do find storage, and you would have to provide your own storage at that point. Zagster definitely is not going to come take them away and bring them back. But we could choose to either leave all of them out, we could leave some of them out. Some of the locations are more protected than others, so that could factor into the decision. Also just usership, like we will keep track of the numbers and decide if these continue to be used through January and February. I mean, people do ride, there are people, clearly
There's
fewer.
one here I know I've
There are
seen
few
on the
many
road
people, exactly.
in the middle of the winter, but
Right,
those are
right.
pretty hardcore.
This is a smaller number, for sure.
And he has his own bike.
Exactly,
There are,
yeah.
there are a number of I mean, it is not common to see these year-round in cities.
Yeah.
But they're available year-round, because even in December and January, there are days that people will ride,
Yeah.
Particularly short distances, using it
Yeah.
from one side of campus to the other. And we'll just have to,
Right.
that's something we're going to have to learn and monitor.
Right.
In terms of the 7%, my understanding is that, they are going to have some cost based upon usage, because they're going to be maintaining these. The higher usage, the more repairs that will occur and maintenance of the system. And my understanding is the 7% provides them with some sort of a volume revenue source based upon usage. So the more usage they get, they generate a little bit more revenue to help cover their operational costs. And that's one of the things that was very attractive to us regarding Zagster, is they do all that. Many of the other bike share programs, the sponsoring agency, typically a city, has to provide those services. So we have to contract with somebody to maintain it or use our staff even to move the bike, to rebalance the bicycles. What we really appreciated about Zagster is they do all that. And so they have, obviously, the more usage, they have costs associated with just that operational, those operational services. And that was my understanding why they charge 7% of the revenue, but the bulk of it will come back to us.
And I'll jump in on that a little bit, too, because I've looked at these systems over the years, and the interesting thing that Zagster does that the others don't, Mark just mentioned, and talking to cities like Des Moines, Iowa, who did a different system, there was a significant effort in balancing inventory, getting the bikes in the right locations day in and day out, and the repair work that you do. There's a fairly sophisticated software platform that records the revenues and lets people know a bike's available or not available, things like that. That all has to be maintained by the sponsoring organization. And that has really kind of closed a door on a lot of communities doing this. And Zagster's figured out a model where they can go to a smaller community and do all this, and a turnkey operation without incurring those local extras that we'd have to provide.
I guess that would be part of the evaluation criteria that actually does play out that way. One last question. How do you reconcile there are no helmets available, you're on your own without a helmet or with a helmet or whatever? Will there be an enterprising helmet rental concession or something like that in town or whatever? I mean, I
Hope so.
I'm not a real avid bicyclist, and when I do bicycle, I don't wear a helmet. Full, disclosure, but this is a little different application, I think, where we're encouraging the use of these things, and with their locations, they're not all going to be trail riders. There are going to be some street riders. So
Right.
that's when I read that, I thought, man, I wonder how certain people on staff are going to reconcile helmets.
Yeah, I do wear a helmet all the time, but I'm married to someone who does not, so even in our own house, we don't agree. Different communities deal with this in different ways, because there are people who feel strongly about wearing a helmet all the time. And so, but your options really are limited, because you really can't reasonably provide helmets at every location. There are helmet vending machines that have been invented, but you're talking about, well, you could imagine what that looks like. That would be enormous, and are these disposable? Then you're creating all this crazy styrofoam waste, and the reality is a lot of people ride bikes and don't get into an accident and they're fine. And you go to somewhere like Europe and nobody's wearing a helmet, which is baffling to me. But I think they are happy to put information on signs if anybody would want to provide like a helmet incentive, whether in some communities, the first time you sign up, you get a coupon to, 50% off a helmet at such and such a shop, or if you're an employer, like Advocate Bromen, they could have helmets available for their employees to use. And it's just like a checkout program for their employees. But it's an issue for all bike share programs. Even Reggie Ride at ISU right now, you see the students riding around, they're not providing helmets for them. So in an ideal world, you'd always have a helmet on. But some people also feel like the wellness benefit of being on a bicycle and getting some exercise in the in the aggregate is a risk worth taking, because it's really good for your health to get out and get some exercise. So,
I'll also weigh in on that one.
Oh, yeah, you have your own
I'll
opinions.
start with an anecdotal story that doing a bike tour in Europe with a group of people years ago, and we all wore helmets, and the local enthusiast riders, one came up to us and said, "Do you fall down a lot?" So it is a different culture in that regard. But the latest industry standards that were presented to the industry this year is that the thing that they were finding was reducing injuries on bike riding more than helmet use was lights, front and rear, on 24 hours a day. That they looked at the automotive industry and the motorcycle industry. When lights are on, when you're riding or a motorcycle or driving your car, they documented a decrease in accidents and injuries as a result of that. So the current thinking in the industry is a helmet is important, yes, but having lights on when you're riding is more important. And these bikes will have that.
They do. They all have built-in lights that are, I don't know if they're I don't know if they're powered by your actual pedaling, like,
I think they're battery.
They're just battery powered. Okay.
I thought they were dynamo.
Thank you.
They're dynamo?
I think they are.
I think they are dynamo lights, yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Human powered.
Further Ms. Lorenz.
A statement and then a question that'll kind of tie back to Mr. McCarthy's question about success measures. But first, the statement, when I first read this, I had to encourage myself to, kind of pull back and look at the larger picture. We've made an investment in Connect Transit, and we believe that Connect Transit and public transit is a good thing for a community. And so I see this as being another piece of that puzzle of then supporting, I guess, if you will, or adding to the usability and the relevance of our public transit. And then I think further about the transportation survey that's out there that I think the Regional Planning Commission is behind. And so, I think for anybody listening here or, in cyberspace, it's important to kind of look at, even though I might not use this, and what in the world are we subsidizing bicycles for? It's easy to go that way because I'm a car driver, and I admire those who choose more environmentally friendly and healthy friendly ways, but it's just not in my lifestyle. And so, but that doesn't make it wrong, and so I guess I had to very intently pull back and say, what's the big picture here? So with that as a statement of support, I do want to go back to the question of success measures, and if a couple of questions buried in here. Did I hear correctly that we don't have to stay in it for the 3 years, that we could opt out after 90 days? Okay, that's a
Correct.
yes. And what will be those measures of success along the way, maybe at the 6-month, 12-month, 18-month, and how can we maybe look to some of these other communities like the West Lafayette's or the Carmel, Indiana, to see, where were they after 6 months or 18 months? So will we have that kind of information and maybe just expound on that a bit?
Sure. So we've talked to staff members at Carmel in particular, also Fort Collins, and they're very happy to share their data as well. So if we wanted to compare how the usage trend line goes, we could certainly do that. My thinking was the first year, we just promote the daylights out of it, push, get people familiar with the system, and maybe more like at the end of the year, see how it went. Mm-hmm. But pausing to look at data along the way is clearly an excellent idea as well. Sometimes you just get caught up in.
Will we be marketing this, or does Zagster, or is it a combination?
So Zagster helps provide all sorts of marketing materials, the graphic art, the layout, et cetera. They'll give you advice, show you what other communities are doing. I mean, they're not going to pay to place ads anywhere, but I anticipate using their materials and then going through the channels that we routinely use, whether that, and a lot of which is free, through our social media, et cetera. And then there are affinity groups in town that I know would also promote it, and not just the Bike Blono type of group, but also there are a lot of health and wellness people. They're just really excited about it. I think a really an excited group will be visitors to the Hyatt and the Marriott. I just think of all the times you go stay in a hotel and you want to know, where can I go for a run in the morning? Is there any bike I could ride? That's not a stationary one in your windowless workout room. And we're right on the trail. So I anticipate hundreds of people. I mean, just think of all the people who come visit. I met some people the other night who were here for State Farm for 5 weeks, and they're living at the Hyatt for 5 weeks. And I asked them if do you know about the trail? And every single one of them like, yep, I run on the trail all the time when I'm here. I'd love to have a bike. You know, I mean, there are just a lot of people that are coming through here that I think will love to be able to get on a bike. And the hotels are never going to provide that for their guests. It's too complicated, you know?
Okay.
I do, if I could, I want to point out that, back to the helmet issue again, in my conversations with Advocate Broman, who are very excited about being part of this, I might add, and they obviously see this as part of their overall community health and wellness mission. They were very concerned about the helmet issue and struggled with it a little bit, and they did their own research and I think came to the same conclusion, there just isn't a good option. But they see this, and one of the reasons they're interested is they see this as an opportunity for not only staff, but people who are visiting patients at the hospital that need some time away. You know how that goes. What a great opportunity to go bike on the trail, which is just, you know, half a block away. They've talked about providing their own helmet checkout program for staff members and other people at the hospital, family members of patients, and I think I think hopefully we see more of that. And to the point of safety, there's a young man in the back of the room there.
Yes.
If he'd stand up, he's here because he's interested, and you see his arm? He pointed out to the mayor, and that's a result of, he fell off his bicycle, but he said, I had my helmet on. So, very proud of him.
Right.
His arm took a hit, unfortunately, but he said he at least avoided brain surgery. which is
Right,
a
no
good
cast
thing.
on his head.
Yep. Further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines? Aye. Mr. Fritzman?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 9 is a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a construction agreement with Cybern LLC to manage the construction and installation of fiber optic cable to the newly expanded enterprise zone and approve a budget adjustment in the amount of $67,023 for the project.
Move approval. Second.
Discussion on this item, Mr. Fritzen?
I have a question on a statement in the report on page 9-2, the second bullet, about the future location of fire station number 2.
Well, the area that we're talking about running this fiber line is in the area where we are considering a potential relocation of headquarters station. And we don't have a site yet, and this is, you know, a possibility, but as, you know, the existing headquarters station, as you know, will ultimately be moved, relocated further to the east in this particular area likely, but we don't have a site yet, so we can't say that for certain, but it has potential of being able to provide more reasonable access to that future fire station if this facility is installed. So that's what that's referring to, and that will become Station 2 in the future, because headquarters will be the new Main Street station.
The fact that it's east of Veterans Parkway just took me aback a bit there, so
Yeah, that's where it'll be.
I-
It'll be east of Veterans Parkway. Yeah.
that's it's news.
That has always been the plan, and that was in the original station relocation, but we don't have a site yet, but it would be a location east of the Parkway. It would be, frankly, Mr. Fritz, it would be hard to find a location west of the Parkway on that side of town. There just are so few parcels available. Well, it'd be a redevelopment site. But there still is on the east side a number of green space alternatives that we would pursue.
I know we've discussed it. I guess I wasn't under the impression that that was a decision, and that we've always had discussions, difficult discussions about how do we get across Veterans Parkway going east. Talk to the state and whatever about other possible creating crossings that aren't there now. So I guess the same would be said if it's coming back west. So that difficulty is still there. So I guess at least reading it in this report as if that's where it's going to be. That was a bit, like I said, it's a
And-
surprise to me. So.
And I apologize, it's not, certainly not a done deal. We don't have a site, that's something that would have to come back to the council. We are actually in the process of looking at potential sites, and we may come back with 2 or 3 alternatives for you to consider. I think at this point, most of our focus has been on the east side of Veterans Parkway, however.
Ms. Lorenz?
Just a comment I want to make about this, this area, and I'm glad to see the movement of the infrastructure with Serban up in that direction, not only for the business that is slated to be there, but obviously, you know, it's an area that is, ripe for further development. And the comment that I guess I want to put out there is that, that's an area that's worth going to see from the surrounding neighbors' perspective, because there really is a very lovely environmental ecosystem out there that honestly I did not know until I visited a neighbor out there existed. I mean, there's just lovely natural plants and, birds that normally I would see on vacation somewhere, So I just want to put out there publicly that as we move forward with that area, that we keep that in mind as we consider future land uses.
Mr. McCarthy?
I, too, am happy to see that we are expanding the Serban Reach as a utility and a economic development driving tool. And I guess maybe Mr. Peterson, this is targeted for you, I guess. Just, are we starting to think about this kind of more broadly in all areas? Or are we just kind of, as things happen, we're looking at opportunities more opportunistically?
I would say it's a more opportunistic approach. I don't, as these things present themselves, and this is the situation here, Terry and I began talking about, hey, maybe this is, we can help the immediate issue with Distill, but in doing so, create opportunity for others, particularly the undeveloped land where this could help incent development in those areas, and looking at it more as a kind of a public utility. But I don't see that we'll be doing a lot of this, but I think when the situations present themselves, we'll certainly look at it and come to you if we think there's an opportunity to make a really important strategic investment.
Good. I hope we do continue to look, and I know you guys are obviously driving this particular decision tonight, and happy that you're doing that, but underutilized space like Constitution Place on the North Trail, I don't know if this particular thing would help or not, but
Possibly.
but
Yeah.
continue to look at that sort of thing. Thank you.
And I would think that the opportunistic approach is probably the right one in the site, that there's so much private development going on in the community that companies are coming in and running their own fiber networks and that. And so we have to be a little more strategic on where we would expend those dollars for that kind of investment. Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritson?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 10 is a resolution authorizing the execution of a redevelopment agreement with Phoenix Station LLC for facade enhancement and front patio construction at 208 Parkinson, and approval of a required budget adjustment. Move approval. Thank you.
Second.
Discussion on this item. Mr. McCarthy.
I was just going to say, I think it's kind of exciting that site, that this is happening. Because it's,
Go ahead, steal my thunder.
yeah.
I've been looking at that building for 20-some years.
Now, careful, the property owner's here.
No,
So don't say anything nasty.
No, I'm
Mr. Feeney is here, and
Excellent.
Jeff Stout is here, chiropractor, who will be occupying the larger share of that building with his chiropractic office, and a partner, another chiropractor is going to be in there, I understand. And of course, Dr. Stout has been a long-time uptown business person. Many a town of Normal employee has wandered across Linden Street to visit Dr. Stout for an adjustment, me included.
Well, we're happy to see that you guys are sprucing up the building. I know we did a similar sort of thing for the Rock, and I think at that time we talked about is, do we have a kind of a town of Normal community development grant formalized program? And maybe you answered it at that time, and I don't remember, but.
Yeah, we did. We had a formal program where we budgeted it, and then there was just not a lot of activity, so we opted not to budget for it, but to address these on a case-by-case. And clearly, we don't have the demand we had initially in Uptown. The Rock was another example where we made a special circumstance and did a budget adjustment. And here, we felt this was very similar and worthy.
Yeah.
But we don't have the facade grant program intact as we used to.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That resolution is approved. That concludes our general orders, and we have one item of new business, and that's the annual presentation of the financial trend and condition report. Andrew?
Give me one moment to wrestle with technology here, and then we'll get our way. Apologize. Okay, here we go. As you mentioned, this is our annual review of the town's condition and trend report for fiscal year 15-16. Similar to previous years, we take a number of indicators, in this case it was 34 for this year, and give them a positive, a negative, or an unclassified indication. The unclassified simply means it's there for information purposes only, and we're not necessarily giving it a rating of positive or negative. We cover a variety of categories. We have 6 in total, you can see from the slide there, from community to expenditures to financial strategies. I'll go through a number of these. In terms of kind of the changes from year to year, you'll probably know right off the bat that we had 38 indicators last year. We have 34 this year, so the question is, what happened to 4 indicators? Well, two of them were actually classified as unclassified indicators. We didn't give a rating on them, but they were very similar information to ones we did rate, so we just combined those with them, and I'll show you the examples of that in the next few slides. We also had 2 that we, for lack of a better word, suspended the reporting of for this year. The reason it was suspended was a fairly complicated reason, but the bottom line is they were pension funding levels for pension plans that we compare ourselves against other municipalities. And you heard the auditor mention GASB 68, which was a significant GASB implementation, all related to pension reporting. And what's happening is, in the year of an implementation of that magnitude, certain organizations don't have it implemented yet. So we gather all the information from their CAFRs. We have finished our implementation of that, so the information is there, but information for, like, say, Bloomington, who's not quite done with theirs, we have to go back to their last year's CAFR, and it's basically kind of apples to oranges comparison of the funding level. So just in terms of making sure that that comparison remains meaningful and comparable, we're going to suspend it for this year. Everyone by next fiscal year will be caught up with that implementation of GASB 68, so we'll be able to reinstitute those 2 reports. One's for police, one's for fire. So there's the 4. We have 2 combined, and then 2 that we're suspending just for this year. In terms of kind of positive, negative flow, you can see that we did have some decreases in positive reports. Again, a couple of things there. One is we did have the 2 I just spoke of, the comparisons for pension funds that were both positive. They're gone now, so that reduced it by 2. We did switch, and I'll get into this in some detail later on, our opinion on our own pension funding level for police and fire from positive with caution to negative, and I'll explain what's going on there. Also, sewer fund, as you know, been moving along at a fairly I don't want to use the word that you mentioned, Mr. McCarthy, scratching by, but it's obviously solvent, but it's reached a point of kind of insustainability in terms of moving forward. Now, the council's dealing with that, as you're well aware, but we did move from positive with caution to negative. Again, the fund's not bankrupt. There just needs to be some motions which have been well in place now for some time to put that in a better path, and we'll talk about that a little bit when that slide comes up. In terms of, we did have one positive, negative to positive. We had county workforce had a small bump up this year. It had been traditionally going down for some time, and we did finally see an increase, which is nice to see. We did put that as positive with caution because it's just the first year, but it's nice to see that happen. The first slide, of course, is assessed value, and this is a good example of where we combined two slides in the old report. There was this slide showing kind of one bar chart of the total assessed value for the town, and then the second page slide would show the breakout between the different sectors of the assessed value. We just combined them into one slide, so it just kind of cleaned the report a little bit and made it a little less, not many pages. You can see in this report that, it hasn't been stellar performance in terms of assessed value. We are certainly in the positive now, last couple of years. Just a 1% increase. Prior to that, we had 2 decreases, which were the first in 30-plus years for the town. In talking with the Rob Cranston, the township assessor, he's saying, don't expect a big increase next year. He's saying about a little over 1% is what he's going to ultimately pass to the county. And then just to let you know, and I'm sure you're aware of this, when it gets to the county, it goes to a board of review where people can test their property tax, and we typically lose some value there. So again, assessed value in terms of the community is steady and minimal growth, but it's relatively steady. So that's kind of the takeaway with this slide. I almost didn't show this slide because it's not all that exciting to look at. There's not a lot going on in terms of up or down. It's the average home price for new prices, which is the blue bar, and then for existing homes, which is the green bar. It's kind of, again, a very kind of a flat line. It's up sometimes, down sometimes. This year, new values are down 1.4%. Existing homes are up just slightly. This is pretty typical what we've seen for the last few years. We have it positive with caution because we're not seeing really any reasonable trend other than kind of flat to some moderate growth. But I think it's an important slide to show. In the end, I showed it because it does explain some of the assessed value growth. We're looking at minimal percentage growth there. Obviously, residential housing is the lion's share of the EAV for the town, and if this continues to be relatively flat or just minimal growth patterns, without significant new development, we won't see significant increase in assessed value. This next chart is, as you can read, it's the airport usage, and it's frankly pretty bad. There's no way to other describe that. In terms of a recap of the last few years, from 2011 we had our first drop, and it's been dropping ever since. 2012, we had the loss of AirTran. That was about midway through 2012, so you can see the impact there. 2013, we had kind of the full impact of not having AirTran for a year, as well as what the airport folks described to us as kind of a retooling of the entire airline industry, where they're cutting back the number of flights, increasing the price, and having more demand for the seats in each plane. That reduced ridership. 2014, there was kind of a wind down of Frontier, which finalized in 2015. And then also, according to the airport folks, essentially a softening of business travel to kind of characterize it that way. So there's obviously struggles there, and we're certainly watching it. And honestly, it's frankly probably one of the most dramatic negative trends that we've seen in the community in recent future. So, unemployment rate. Again, the chart here demonstrates the blue bar, which is the state rate, and then of course the kind of the maroon red bar is the town rate. We started having some recovery, although recently at 2016 there was a bump up both for the state and for the town. You can see from the chart on the left or chart on the right of the screen, Normal is, kind of in third place, I guess you can call it. We usually traditionally have always been kind of the best in terms of the lowest rate. But everybody frankly had an increase in that we compare ourselves against year to year. We had the largest there, which is likely the result of the Mitsubishi plant closing. Still, obviously a good rate. We're kind of in contrast with the rest of the U.S. in terms of where they're at. And also, we are better off than the state is, and to our peers in a fairly good condition. But not a good time to see it go in that direction, but it's likely to see, stabilize in the next year or two. The next chart is kind of the one that we saw kind of finally a nice push. We did have several years of declining workforce in the county, and that was for a variety of reasons. Now we did see for the first time in 2016 a slight increase. Now it is an increase, and again we did say positive with caution because we're not sure what's going to happen in the future. But it looks like perhaps that has bottomed out, and now we'll start to see some moderate to growth in the future for that. This chart we show it every year just to kind of give the council and whoever might be looking at this information a sense of revenue diversity. You can see that the town is pretty diverse in terms of revenue sources and not overly reliant on any single one. Now, this is the town-wide, so it includes water and sewer, of course. If you look at this at general fund only, then there is some reliance on sales tax, which we already are aware of that, about 32%. But generally speaking, the town has what I would characterize as a very mixed and robust diverse revenue mixture. Income tax, this has been a very interesting year for income tax. You can see, and not to go back in history, but started in 2012, we essentially started significantly recovering from the recession of 2008 with 8.1% in 2012, 2013, 11.1, 2014, 8.1, and then, we started slowing down in 2015 to just basically flat. So our position during those budget cycles in that year was, well, we're probably not going to see a whole lot of increase in 2016. Well, that was completely not what happened. As you can see, we took on 8.8%, which was quite surprising. As we investigated this with the state over the last several months, took a while to kind of figure out who the right person was to talk to, and even the explanation was a little unusual when we first got it. But it does make a lot of sense now. Two things happened that made the revenue in 2016 kind of this inappropriate underlying. The underlying increase was not there. It was kind of a one-time increase in revenue for income tax. So the question is, what happened? Two things. One, the state confirmed with us that in 2014 tax year, which was also a fairly good year for the stock market, there was a lot of capital gain tax, income tax being taxed for individuals. Now, they paid those taxes in 2015, and they usually pay them as late as possible, which is April 15th, or even extension beyond that. So you're paying 2014 tax in 2015, and actually that's going to be our fiscal year for 15-16. So the state mentioned that was a very unusual year, a very high year for that type of income tax portion of capital gains. The second thing that's even kind of more interesting is when the state reduced the income tax rate from 5 to 3, they said that has an impact on you guys where you got a lot more money. And I was a little confused at that at first, so I had to call actually the person who wrote that in the article saying, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, let me explain to you. So what essentially what's happened is the state has a tax rate that they tax on income tax, which you're well aware of. That money goes into a pot of money, basically a pool of money, and it's distributed through formula to the different cities. When the state decreased it from essentially 5 to 3.75 on January 1st, they also modified the formula that they would give money to the cities on to make us basically hold harmless for that decrease. We didn't get extra money when they increased it back in 2011. We're not going to lose money by decreasing the rate. We were basically held harmless in both those situations. However, when they did that the exact same day, they're still bringing money in from the old tax rate into the new enhanced formula. We were actually getting more of that. So every city across the state got an extra income tax based on that, essentially the mechanics of that formula changing with the rate. This wasn't a mistake. The state knew what they were doing. Their systems can't carve out certain tax rates from certain years and apply that to the formula, so they just kind of knew that everyone's going to get a bump. And they've made it clear in their projections for the next year that everyone's going to get a big drop compared to what they had last year. So we're a little concerned about that. It was nice to see that plus come in. It wasn't an underlying increase in overall activity. It was just a one-time bump. So we'll address this as part of our budget process, and we'll deal with it, but it will be a little bit of a change in our approach.
You rarely hear the phrase, "the state knew what it was doing," but I guess it applies in this case.
This chart is a good chart also. It kind of demonstrates in a lot of different information. It shows the overall property tax distribution for a resident here in the town. Overall, what your property tax bill is being charged to. You can see the line share goes, of course, to Unit 5 at over 60%. The town is sitting right there at about 10.8. That's a little small on my screen. Yes, 10.8. And we rate this as positive because the town has purposefully tried to manage its tax rate, as this council is well aware, and dutifully doing that. And we like to keep that rate right around that 10 to 11% of the total property tax bill. And it's, as you can see, it's been a very consistent approach for many years. So that's why we rate that positive, and it kind of gives the taxpayer a good view of what's happening with their overall tax rate. When a tax rate is passed by this body and other bodies, it combines to a total tax rate for the community. Speaking of that, of course, in terms of where we stand comparably, if you just look at the town's piece, just that 10% piece that was on the previous slide, the 10.8, and compared to our counterparts that we do this analysis with, we currently have the lowest tax rate that's for just the town. You can see that we look at Bloomington, Springfield, Champaign. The chart there, you see two different colors of blue with Springfield, Champaign, Peoria, Urbana, and Decatur. They all have park districts. Bloomington, Galesburg, and of course, we all fund our parks through our regular revenue. So just for in terms of an apples-to-apples comparison, we do develop that tax rate for both the district and the city. For the community rate, again, this is getting back to the total pie chart of that rate, which includes Unit 5, the community college, the airport, ourselves, the library. Look at that rate. We're certainly in the hunt for the bottom four tier of the lowest rates. You can see the higher ones, Decatur and Urbana. So we're there in that section, and that's a fair place to be. I think last year Bloomington had the lowest community rate. That switched this year with Springfield in terms of where they're at with their rate structure. The next chart is also an example, again, of where we combine some information. Again, we just used to have one bar chart, one bar color for utility tax revenue, and then we had a second page that kind of broke out the different sections, electricity, gas, and telecommunications, and so forth, and cable, and now we just combine that to show the various components of the total revenue. This, again, is also kind of a problematic revenue, and one that we don't have big expectations on in terms of growth. In fact, there's none. I think we budget typically a flat line or maybe just a little smidge for, I guess you call for hope. But right now, last year it went down by 4.4%, and a lot of that was related to a refund the state made on a statewide basis that we all had to kind of put money in for one of the wireless carriers they were overtaxed, and it was a significant case that everyone contributed to. So our thought was, well, we saw a decrease last year, maybe we'll see a bump this year, and actually we saw more of a decrease this year. Now, a lot of this is weather dependent, and it's been pretty mild Christmas and mild summers the last couple of years, so that's part of it. But it continues to be a revenue stream that's not really going to grow, even with everything being equal in terms of seasons, because people become more efficiency in those systems and so forth. So again, there's not much to say beyond the fact that it's a problematic revenue source. It's a significant revenue source for us, and one that we need to continue to watch to see if anything can be done to either enhance it or just reverse some of that general flatlining trend. State and local sales tax. This chart demonstrates both of them. The light blue is local and the dark blue is state. You can see that we did have a bump up this year in the light blue, which is local, and it's a fairly big increase, but that, of course, as you probably can already determine, it's the 1% sales tax increase that was effective January 1st, so we have 3 months of that increase sitting in our numbers for our fiscal year end of March. We had a small drop in state share sales tax, just 20 basis points from last year, so not great. And then also if you take away the rate increase for local, it was about a 1.5% increase. So, again, this is kind of another mild concern in terms of revenue growth. We've got the income tax issue where we're going to see a bump down. Utility tax is relatively problematic, and now sales tax, we're hoping to see some growth there, but it's kind of mild increases or flat depending on the year. Food and beverage, this one continues to amaze me and everybody that looks at it. Huge increase this year and continuing to have big increases every year. This is obviously a function of a lot of the new offerings that are available in the town over this last fiscal year. I looked at the numbers today, and it still continues to grow over last year, I believe. I'll look at it again. So again, this is a fairly strong revenue source, and no reason to believe it's going to slow down, but it always kind of surprises me when it comes in. We didn't budget. We budgeted in the year we're in now, we budgeted 3.25%. So we're being cautious on that. We won't see 9.9 again or 9.6 again, but you never know. It's continually amazes me every year. In terms of town expenditures, again, this is similar to the chart we showed before revenue, just to show some diversity. You can see, obviously, the lion's share is public safety, which is police and fire and inspections and so forth. Outstanding debt, this shows our current outstanding debt for the last since 2007. And it's been increasing because, as you know, we've been issuing debt for the town renewal and then recently for some specific projects. The bump from 15 to 16 was essentially the last debt issue we just had for the 2016 bond issue. It's a $10 million bond issue supporting our uptown renewal efforts, some community projects, and also the fire station construction. One thing we do have this marked as kind of positive with, hang on a second, positive with caution. A couple of things to note there, and we've said this before, and the council is well aware of this. As we go forward, we'll need to identify revenue for new debt issues. The debt we have now is completely satisfied by our revenue sources that have been designated already. So we have it with caution, somebody says, to have that continued dialogue that the council always has about their due diligence they do in terms of issuing debt, but we'll have to continue that obviously going forward. Also, I do want to note we haven't received the official press release from Fitch, but the town recently went under a re-rating from Fitch Company. Typically, as you're aware, if we go to market with a bond issue, we'll have the rating companies come in and do a rating for us to give us a sense of our credit, and then that helps price the bonds in the market. But every once in a while, Moody's or S&P or Fitch will change their rating criteria. And they don't make it easier, they typically make it more stringent. We discovered this a few years ago with S&P, where they made it much more stringent, and we actually had a bit of a slight decrease in our rating that was just not doing anything we've done. It just that some of their criteria made it impossible for us to have a certain rating at a certain level. So honestly, we were kind of expecting a little bit of the same from Fitch. We're AAA with Fitch. One tick below AAA with Moody's, and essentially 2 ticks with S&P now. The rating call went very well with Fitch, and they came back and reaffirmed our AAA rating, and also a stable outlook. So nothing's really changed. We continue to be very stable. They know us very well. They've been with them for several years. They understand our industry. They understand our management philosophy, how the council works, the 1% sales tax increase, and then you've done things like that in the past. So they're very comfortable with us, so it was nice to see. I was kind of expecting also, Mrs. Reese and Mr. Reese were kind of expecting maybe a little bit of a click down, just because AAA is as high as you can be, and the criteria I said in the past are typically made more difficult, and I assume there was more difficult, but we still passed their test at AAA, so that was a very nice thing to see. General fund balance, this just shows general fund balance as reported in the CAFR. A nice tick up this year and about $1.9 million surplus, and that's pretty typical for us for the most part in general fund. We typically see that kind of surplus every single year. The only time we ever had any deficits in general fund alone was back in the recession years, but again, pretty stable. A lot of that will be rebudgeted. Some of that's just carryover. We'll need to rebudget, and mostly street activity that was not spent. But it is nice to see, and like I said, we always typically have a nice surplus. Police pension plan, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. I don't want to necessarily bore you with it, but it is a topic that is significant now. As you can see, this chart shows the town's pension funding level. And in terms of a recap, and I know you're well aware, but it's important to kind of discuss, this is the percent. It basically compares our plan assets, which is our cash and investments, against the plan liability, which is the overall liability of paying the retirees and the actives, when they retire, their full liability for retirement. Right now, we're at 57.02%. So that's concerning to us. We have flipped it from positive with caution because we knew for many years since the recession that the investment market wasn't going to give us returns that were comparable to our assumption that it was going to give us in terms of our actuarial analysis. The town hasn't shied away from that. Two times this council has decreased our rate assumption to combat that, and with some significant upward pressure on the property tax levy to get that done. So we thought when we did the last one, which is back in 2013, from 7% to 6.75, that we might be comfortable for a while and let the economy come back. And as you know, pension funding comes from three sources. It comes from the employee, the employer, and investment earnings. And investment earnings is a lion's share of where the money comes from for the entire pension plan. The employee's paying their share, and the town is paying its share in terms of our due diligence, and I would have what I characterize as a good practice in terms of funding that. I wouldn't say it's aggressive, but it certainly is very prudent and above the minimum what state requires. But the investment community, to call it something, is just not making the mark. And we thought we'd see a little return to that, and we just have not. So staff has, in essence, lost confidence in that assumption at 6.75. We're looking at different options, and I know the council is aware of this, and we'll be coming back to you in November with a tax proposal, a tax levy proposal that will be commensurate with addressing this. But even that upward pressure on that tax levy, as you see it, and may or may not recommend it and approve it, isn't going to solve the problem. There needs to be some more long-term adjustments to our plan, and like I said, we've had what I would characterize as a good funding plan. Better, we're in fairly good condition compared to others, but honestly, at 57%, that's a warning sign for our own pension needs to get in front of, which we always do. So we'll be coming back to you with a report to more reports and options. I believe this will be part of the retreat, and I want to kind of default to Mr. Peterson or Ms. Reese to kind of share more about it.
Let me just add, we are not alone. The low investment yield that we are experiencing, every municipality, every government agency is dealing with the same problem. Every insurance company, it's not just pensions, it's insurance and other types of organizations that rely on long-term interest income. They're all being affected by these really low investment yields. And I guess, the silver lining is we've already done quite a bit. You've already reduced, I think I shared with you the article in the Panagraph a week or so ago about the state. They're still at 7.5% assumption, and they're talking about going down to 7. And that's going to cost the state, I think they said, $400 million a year.
Right.
You've bitten that bullet, so to speak, a couple of times, and we may have to do some more. But we are not unique, and I'm not sure every public entity's talking about it. There are a lot of them that are just avoiding it and saying, we just hope and pray that things turn around and investment yields come back to 7 or 7.5%. And if it does, we are in great shape. But we'll be talking about this at your retreat in November, and this is something that we'll deal with. It's not, we are in a position that we can deal with it, and we will, but we're just acknowledging this is a growing concern, and we want to react, now as opposed to wait until wait and deal with this later when the problem is much more severe and it'll be much more difficult to deal with. So the good news is we have strategies, we have plans, we have approaches to deal with this, and we'll talk with you in detail about those in November when you have your planning retreat.
Fire, same situation, kind of the same story. Didn't have quite as significant a drop as police, but again, they're under the same assumption, and we would address them equally the same. IMRF, a little bit of a decrease from over last year, but that one is really completely out of our hands. We simply pay what IMRF tells us to pay, and I would characterize IMRF as very well run. They see a lot of good interest return. They know their business. Most of the plans they have are 75, 80% plus funded, and the biggest drop is from the recession, but they are climbing back at a remarkable level, so no issues there to worry about, and no real effect we can have on that other than we certainly pay what we were told to pay religiously. So, switching to water, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, other than the fact that water continues to be in a good financial position, in large part to what the council's done to manage rates and what the department's done to manage their operations and their capital needs. You can see we did have a bit of a drop in revenue. That's the dark blue line last couple of years. Not overly concerned about that. Plenty of fund balance, plenty of capital needs being satisfied, plenty of revenue there, and expenses, offsetting it. Again, mild, wet summers.
It's not a good summer for water sales.
No. Yeah.
Great for lawnmower sales,
Right,
but not good
right.
for water sales. But those things happen.
Yep, and so again, we're not overly stressed about it. We'll see a return to that, unless, overall the world's getting drier and drier, we don't know, but that, like I said, we're fine. Sewer, again, lot's going on here at the council level and staff level in terms of addressing it. We've mentioned it for years that it's problematic and not bankrupt or insolvent, but certainly not able to sustain itself going forward for the capital needs that we foresee. We're at the tail end of completing an assessment, the multi-year assessment process, and then a pending capital plan. All this will mix into some kind of a rate restructuring, and we'll be coming to council in the near future with that. But I think the point here is we did rate it negative. We finally switched from positive to negative only because, we're kind of at a point where we thought something had to be done, but certainly the council's already addressed it and is addressing it. I think this fund will be back on the way to fiscal prosperity and to say the lack of a better term in the next few years. So it's good to see
This is
happening.
solvable. We'll solve
Yep,
this.
exactly.
But right now it's negative, but we've got a roadmap to solve it.
Yep. Health and dental fund, just a small tick up in terms of surplus. Again, good story there, positive trend, under control, well managed, good wellness programs, good history, good consultants. So that's just a good story all around. The last section of our trend report is our fiscal strategies, and again, we've used these for many, many years. They give us kind of a fiscal roadmap that we can follow. We don't always adhere to them, but we know when we're getting off the road and we can get back on again, and they're always for good decisions. You can see what we look at there, the general fund reserve level, contingency, and debt capacity levels, and so forth. And we do use this a lot for our fiscal planning and giving the council the best information we can in terms of recommendations. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. General fund reserve is probably our most primary one. We are meeting that level right now, 15% cash in the bank that represents liquidity in the fund compared to total expense and transfers out for the fund. Not quite making it for years 19, 20, and 2021, but those are well out years, and we're just barely below 15. And
We'll get there.
yeah, we're generally
When we get
pretty
out there,
conservative.
We'll be at 15.
Yeah, yep. But again, full disclosure, but again, we're not concerned about it at all because our conservative budget model gets more and more conservative as the out years ago, so. Vehicle and equipment reserve, you know this fund well. Again, we like to keep in that fund about 110% of the average spending for the next 5 years. That's kind of our target. We're meeting it for most of the years. The previous year, you recall, we actually were below that. We were able to rebuild it in this last fiscal year. So we put with caution because we're kind of right on the edge there, but it's a significant savings account we have. It helps us save on interest costs and leasing costs because we can buy the stuff when it comes due. So it's a fund that for lack of a better characterization, we're kind of all proud of to keep healthy, and it's in fine shape. Our contingency levels, we keep that at generally 1% or above in total expenditures. You can see that it goes from $750,000 in 17 to 5.2 million. That, of course, is the unallocated 1% sales tax that is sitting in that account to be utilized as part of the budget process and part of your priorities in terms of how to spend those funding. And then debt management, again, all good on there. We like to stay below our debt payment below 10% of our annual revenue, which we are well below that right now. I think we're in the 8.5 area. And then, of course, we're managing our long-term coverage ratios at 1.25% of total debt service. So, again, that's for all years, so no problem there. And then finally, health insurance reserve levels. Again, you saw the slide a few slides back. It's got a good, strong fund balance. We use a fairly conservative target there of the last fiscal close year. What's the 4 highest months of expenses? And that's going to be the new one going forward. So it kind of rolls with as the spending intensifies. A little bit below in the out years, but again, same thing as general fund, pretty conservative practice. So we'll meet that goal as we get those years. Just in summary, so community indicators, steady with some notable issues in terms of the airport. Revenue, we do have some concerns this year, going in this current year and next budget cycle, but we'll address those. Expenditures are increasing, but they're manageable. Our debt service remains stable. Again, AAA rating reaffirmed, which was great to hear. We had a refunding recently of Row 6 bonds. We saved $1 million over the next life of those bonds remaining. We will be in the bond market in the next couple years for sure with the big projects that the council is already aware of. So it's good to have that strong rating going forward and these things in place to manage that. Fund balances remain strong in all funds, and all of our strategies are positive. So generally speaking, a good position. We're not without our budget challenges. Again, we have a kind of a flat to moderate revenue growth we need to manage through as part of the budget process. Pension funding is going to be a significant issue for the council to review and work through. And then also, again, not a significant issue, but something to be on the radar screen. Future debt issues, we'll need to allocate some revenue to those, which we have kind of tucked away some ideas for that, which the council is well aware of. But again, it's just my obligation to state that we need to also make sure we designate those, which we will. Good surplus, as usual, in 15-16. That's going to carry us well into our budget process this year. Again, we're going to have some challenges in the current year with where we're going to land because of the revenue strains. But again, I trust our budget process. I trust the information, how we get it to you, and I trust the decisions get made. So even though I do foresee some challenges, we're going into it with a strong balance sheet. And we have what I would characterize as a fantastic budget process to manage these issues. So, with that concludes the presentation. I didn't cover all the slides. If there's a particular one you want to talk about in the book, I'm happy to go over it. But beyond that, I have nothing else to report.
Well, I'll just start with a comment that this document is such an incredible help to us, and it's a great snapshot for the community as a whole to really kind of wrap their heads around what's happening financially with the town of Normal. I will say that that will be posted on our website
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, so people can refer to that. I refer people to it very often when they have questions and want a little more detail about a certain area of that they have concerns about. And it's been an incredible document. And I know it's a lot of work for you and your team, but it's well worth it, and we thank you for it.
Yeah, in fact, I just think, is Deanna still? Oh, Deanna's left. Karen Killingsworth and Mike Steele and Sue Wong are back there. Deanna was also back here. Deanna puts a lot of the work into this document. And I just kind of coattailing your comment, I agree. We like putting it together. We like this kind of stuff, but it is a lot of work. But it really forces, and we don't need to be forced to deal with issues, but you can't hide from the numbers, and you can't hide from what they're telling us, and it helps us guide a lot of our information to you. And so, again, we don't need to be told what to look at, but it does essentially force you to deal with things and not hide from what's happening. So,
Great. Ms. Gaines?
Well, first, adding on, I do thank you all. It's a job well done, and it does help us a lot. And adding with that comment, this isn't my main question, but your slides you used this year to put a lot of the information on, they're really cool. They were very pleasant to look at as we go through. Thank you.
Right.
But I was just noticing with the airport, because that's been something we've been very concerned about for quite some time. And do we compare that? Is there any way we get that comparison as far as if ours has gone down that much, what has it done in Springfield or Champaign? And I realize, sometimes Peoria. I mean, because it's a really important economic tool in our community.
We can certainly get, that information is readily available. We can get it. I mean, I can tell you what I think, but I better not. But I can also share with you, the mayor and I have had regular conversations with our representatives to the airport board and urging them to do everything possible to try to, get more air service and better connections and certainly maintain what we have.
Right.
And hopefully see some improvement. It is a tough business. It's a tough industry, very competitive. That's why we need to, it's a dogfight out there. But in fact, we've got a meeting coming up, I think, next week with one of our representatives to the airport board, and we have two, and we're in contact with both of them. So.
And do we still keep some of the money in case if an airline would choose to come, that we can do the backup of?
There is, yeah, we have nothing in that. There was at one time a Community Air Service Initiative fund, and I don't think all of our money was refunded. I think there still may be some private money that's managed by the chamber. I'm not sure. But certainly if there was an opportunity that presented itself, we would certainly want to, be asked, and we could consider participating in a new air service initiative. Absolutely. And I think the airport's aware that we stand ready, as does Bloomington and the county, and major employers stand ready to help if that opportunity presents itself. But we'll try to get some comparative airport
Absolutely.
data. That would be interesting.
Right.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Thank you. Great reports.
Thank you. Thanks.
Our pleasure.
Andrew. That concludes our business here tonight. Before taking a motion for adjournment, are there comments or concerns?
I have one quick item. I want to introduce a gentleman sitting in the audience that I don't know you know. John Burkhart he didn't know I was going to call on him. John, would you stand a minute? John is our water treatment plant supervisor ordinarily, but he's agreed to serve as the interim director of water while that position is vacant, so we appreciate his service and thank him for being here. You'll see more of John over the coming weeks and months.
Great. Thank you.
John.
Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Hi.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
We joked at
usually
staff that
fast.
this was the meeting for
I get enough from there.
Yeah, I'm a nerd. I jumped up and down when I saw that it was the conditions of transfer. I was like, what?
I am giving.
Sounds like a good idea. Your eyes are getting puffy.
I'll get you.
Okay, requires me now to get up.